A wing back during the week are given to Jason Killeen and Sean O'G to play. We were in before that has in fact become a reality. This Connacht football semi-final is underway. Leitrim await the winners after their shock win over Roscommon last Sunday. Sean Davey has gone back to help out David Durkin. Centre half back Michael Langan under pressure. Galway, remember, playing with this strong wind in this first half and be hoping to manipulate that situation in terms of scores. Pádraig Joyce leading by example, of course, this afternoon, captaining the side. County champions from Ballinare. Here's Michael Donnelly. Galway expect something special from him today, and he wins himself a free. Quickly taken by Declan Meehan. Paul Clancy, who is reputedly playing exceptional football at the moment. Good crossfield ball to Sean O'G, and you can already see how difficult the conditions are here in Markovitz Park. Paul Taylor wins possession cleanly. Desi Sloyne, scorer 2 points when introduced in that historic win over Mayo, their first in 25 years. Free to Sligo. Desi Sloyne going to take it. Sean Davey. Outside him is Paul Durkin. Good defending by Galway, pushing Sligo back out into the centre field area. That last charge was illegal, according to Brian White. And another free for Sligo. Paul Taylor, scorer of 5 points in their victory over Mayo, going for his first in the semi-final. Sean O'Donnell, who openly admitted that he likes the role of a defensive midfielder, showing his talent. Very near his own goalposts. Running through the middle is former minor and under-21 star this season, Joe Bergen. Loves to go forward. Nice duet with Sean O'Donnell at the other end. Psychologically, that must be a wonderful boost to Joe Bergen. But what's very significant here is that whole move started with Sean O'Donnell, his midfield partner, catching the ball at the other end. It ended with Bergen scoring this great point.
It's a terrific score by Joe Bergen. He's noted for going forward. Paul Clancy and Michael Donlan are going well back in the half-back line, winning the ball and just letting it up straight away. But it's very noticeable from the start. The conditions are going to be very, very difficult, and first touch is going to be hard.
And thankfully, Tony, for everybody here in Sligo, the rain has stopped for the moment. Jason Killeen, Sean O'Donnell, pumping it long. Sligo in a panic. Pádraig Joyce on the turn, and that's over the bar. Derek Savage was inside and available, but perhaps Joyce did the right thing. But terrible defending by Sligo, it must be said. This is a ball that should have been cleared. Let's just watch this again as that ball came in. Sligo defending was poor. They actually patted the ball down, and it was an easy score for Galway. Joe Bergen from Mount Bellew, Moylach, has obviously picked up an injury. But a good start.
Yeah, good start. With that type of ball, Mark, it's very, very hard to defend against it. Now, there's a strong wind going in. Galway are letting the ball in. So it's 50-50 ball. It could break anyway. And for a cornerback with an early ball, it's very hard to defend. You try and get a hand or a leg or something in there just to try and get it out of the danger area. So that's very effective with this weather, but it's very hard as a cornerback to defend it.
One of the Sligo defenders, though, should have called, really.
Yeah, or get rid of it. Just a hand or a leg or anything. Just get it out of the area.
Good start for Galway. Ronan Keane. And Keane again. Tommy Joyce in his way. It breaks for Niall Finnegan. There's a boot there from Tommy Joyce, so that's going to be a free to Sligo. Here's Paul Durkin, but off the ball, John McPartland was being fouled by Ray Selk, and Brian White, to his credit, spotted it. So from where that foul was committed, which is on the Galway 65, it's a free for Sligo. Paul Taylor and Desi Sloan combining. Joe Bergen. Jason Killeen won an All-Ireland club medal with Curragh Fen, and although he's only in his early 20s, he's a player with some experience. Sean O'Donnell again operating as an extra defender, keeping an eye on Paul Taylor in that central pivotal role. Mark Cosgrove. Gurteen in County Sligo. Paul Durkin, nice combination. Low ball for Jerry McGowan. No nonsense from the Galway defender, showing great tenacity. It's Paul Clancy, knocked away by Paul Durkin, and that's going to be a free for Sligo. And it's good passionate football.
Yeah, that's terrific intensity. This is the intensity that Mayo didn't have the last day. Galway and Sligo really want to win this game. Mayo the last day just played the game as if it was a 7-a-side.
Terrible ball given away by Ronan Keane, but Michael Donnellan gets the kick ahead. Good defending by Noel Maguire. Didn't really look where he was delivering it, and it's an easy ball in turn for Paul Clancy. David Durkin, very passionate, very intense opening. Sean Davey, with him is Declan Meehan. That's great defending by Meehan, well done. Jason Killeen. Sean O'Donnell again inside his own half-back line. Needs the support again of Jason Killeen. Derek Savage with his first real touch of the ball to his captain, Pádraig Joyce. Good quality ball going into that full forward line. And one aspect of the tactical plan from a Sligo perspective not working at the moment. They're under pressure, but remember, Sligo are playing against a very strong breeze. Here's Michael Donnellan. And that is, yes, over the bar. 3 different players have scored for Galway. First, Joe Bergen, then Pádraig Joyce, and finally, centre-half forward, Michael Donnellan, operating at left half. There's a moment hesitation by the umpire, but he was convinced ultimately that it in fact had gone over the crossbar. Niall Finnegan comes in pursuit of possession and wins it. Paul Clancy causing problems out of the right half forward position. And that's the first wide for Galway. But Paul Clancy is a player that looks hungry for possession, determined to make a name for himself.
In fact, all the Galway team are hungry. Last year, after winning in All-Ireland, you give a year of kind of a honeymoon period where you kind of lose the hunger. But this year, they look hungry, they look like they want the ball, they're winning the breaks, and they're letting very, very good ball in.
Donnellan again. Niall Finnegan has gone into the corner and wants it. Finds Pádraig Joyce. Looking for the options. Tommy Joyce makes the penetrating run, and that is just slightly off target. Anxious faces in the crowd of almost 16,000. In the absence of Kevin Walsh, a lot of responsibility falls on his shoulder, and so far performing more than adequately. Michael Langan, second cousin of a chap that played in the 75 Connacht Championship win, Barnes Murphy, which was the last time, of course, that Sligo won this Connacht title. Declan Meehan, Eamon O'Hara. Good ball down towards John McPartland. A name you would associate more with Fermanagh. In fact, his father, John Sr., played for Fermanagh. But this young McPartland is a player that is well capable of taking a score. Good intelligent play, held possession. Paul Durkin on the overlap is Desi Sloyne on the opposite wing to which he was selected on. And that is just to the left and wide. The first wide of the game for Sligo. Desi didn't seem to agree with the umpire's decision here. And it's hard to tell from that particular perspective. Michael Langan again. Paul Taylor. Good ball inside. Sligo have an option here, but good defending by Gary Fahy. Michael Donlan having to chase. In vain. Ronan Keane from the Drumcliff Ross's Point Club. Eamon O'Hara. Back to Ronan Keane. Never really looked like was going to cause problems for Mark McNamara in the Galway goalposts, in the Galway goal. So it's going to be a kick out for the Galway keeper. Mickey Moran in his 4th championship season with Sligo, hoping to guide them to a Connacht final. Paul Taylor picking up the loose ball. Fouled subsequently. And they find Ken Killeen for the first time. Sean Davey taking a shot, and that too is wide. The 3rd wide of the game. A little bit over anxious because again there was an option. Sean Davey had Paul Durkin in perhaps a better position.
Yes, since the start of the game, that was the worst wide, really, because the other times they shot wide, the Galway defence and midfielders were putting them under pressure. But there it was an unforced shot. He could have taken his time and just slotted it over the bar.
Nicely taken up by David Durkin. Sean Davey under pressure from Declan Meehan. Michael Donlan using the long ball effectively. Well caught by Brendan Phillips. And loses it on landing, and Derek Savage comes away with it. Fouling by Ronan Keane as the referee points to him. And it's going to be a free for Galway. Really, they should be using that long ball, considering they have wind advantage.
Yes, but in fairness, anytime they let it in, they do get a return from it, either a score or a shot on goal. But Sligo are coming into it a little in the middle of the field, that are making it a lot more difficult for O'Gonal and Bergen there.
This is what Niall Finnegan is facing. Slips as he takes the kick, but it goes over. Galway have registered 4 points. Only 1 from a place kick, scored by this man, Niall Finnegan. Donlan fisting it down. The in-rushing Joe Bergen just challenged as he was taking the kick, and he sends it wide, and they are now equal, if not on the scoreboard, but in terms of wides, 3 each.
Mark, I don't think we can emphasise enough the strength of the wind here. It's absolutely blowing a hurricane down the field. And I think if Sligo can go in without conceding a goal and keeping the score down, just down a little bit more, I think they would even be quite happy going in at half-time.
That gives you an idea of the strength of the breeze here in Sligo. Eamon O'Hara. Michael Langan. Jesse Sloyne did well to get there ahead of Sean O'Dupuer. Amy and Ken Killeen, not a good ball for him, but the break falls to John McPartland. Sean Davey is available. McPartland has a go himself, but again sends it wide. Well, 16 and a half minutes played, and Sligo have yet to score. But again, the wind is a major factor. In fact, Sligo have the distinction, I think it was back in 1929 in a Connacht semi-final against Galway. Galway ended up scoring 1-7. Sligo failed to score at all. I'm sure that's not going to happen today, as Sligo form and football ability has greatly improved. In fact, the following year, Sligo came back to beat Galway. Paul Taylor stepping aside from the challenge of Michael Donlan. It's not a good quality ball at all for Ken Killeen. He needs it low, chest high, so he can meet it. Not a high ball. Declan Meehan. Gone inside is Niall Finnegan. Mark Cosgrove coming in now to challenge, stopping his route to goal. Finnegan under pressure. Good defending by Mark Cosgrove. Still gets in the kick and sends it over the bar. His second of the match, first from play. But a real dangerous situation from a Sligo perspective, but Mark Cosgrove stood his ground firmly. And full credit to Niall Finnegan here. When his route to goal was stopped, he made a little bit of space for himself and took advantage. Joe Bergen punching it forward. Porrick Joyce getting out to Michael Donlan. Testing ball for the goalkeeper. Easily deals with it, Peter Walsh. Jason Killeen getting a touch to it. Michael Donlan. And again, very much involved. Back out to Joe Bergen. Galway players available. One of them, Porrick Joyce, and the captain sends it over the bar for his second. A classy point by any standards. And Galway's superiority out the field is reflected on the scoreboard, which now reads as follows. Galway, 6 points. Sligo, no score. Many options available to the player in possession. Porrick Joyce was one of those players, and what a great point.
That full forward line moves so beautifully, even chipping the ball along the ground, their little slip passes, they're beautiful to watch the way they play football.
Paul Durkin. Sweeping up Declan Meehan. Sean O'Donnell. Michael Langan picking up the stray ball. Ken Killeen is now out of midfield trying to gather possession. Head down, that really could have been a free against him. Referee allowed the play to develop. Good interception here by Ronan Keane. And the space in front of him opens up. Chance of a point, very much wide. A kept going for a little further. The picture tells the story. Great disappointment that Sligo have still failed to score against a John O'Mahony managed side. Jason Killeen knocked away from him by Paul Taylor. Here's Desi Sloying. Taylor has gone to the other side, and again Declan Meehan just gets a little touch. He's playing well, the right half back. Michael Donlan again very much in the thick of the action. Paul Clancy stepping aside challenge. Very difficult angle. Oh, that's a great point. Superb play.
That was superb play from the half-back line all the way up. And really in Ireland today, there's only one or two teams can play football like that. That's Kerry when they go well, and this Galway team. They're the most talented panels that they are in Ireland. But the one thing about the two teams, they don't go for the 70 minutes. So Sligo shouldn't give up yet. They're still in there with a real good chance.
Good distribution of scores too amongst the players. One midfielder and 4 of the forwards have scored. Not relying on just one. Sean Oak de Puer. Thought about adding to the tally of his county. Just failed. I think Sligo will be just happy to try and keep down the score in this first half because the breeze is so strong.
It is very strong, but when they come forward, they show their inexperience in a way. They're shooting from 30 or 40 yards, and they could even be cynical about it and draw a foul and get fouled and just take their point.
Paul Clancy. Galway enjoying dominance in the midfield area. Niall Finnegan. Corey Joyce. Picked up by Derek Savage, cutting inside the cover and sent over the bar. 5 of the 6 Galway forwards have now scored. And just for a moment here, there was a possibility of a goal.
Any doubts anyone had about the hunger Galway have are definitely blown away in this first half. Any break that's there, they're dying on it. They're letting it off intelligently. They're all supporting. They're all working very, very hard for either. Mayo or Sligo will have to get a grip at midfield now and get good ball into their forward line. They'll really have to at this stage.
And isn't Joe Bergen doing very well on Eamon O'Hara?
Doing very well. Eamon O'Hara has to defend. I suppose the one... Instead of trying to stop him going forward, Eamon O'Hara is back there defending.
Here's Jason Killeen. Remember, he's the centre half back, introduced and given a chance by John O'Mahony. Peter Walsh has to just backpedal a small bit. Ronan Keane is being well marked by Michael Donlan, but still gets the pass and the ball. But loses possession. And it goes back to the goalkeeper. Paul Durkin is available. Derek Savage chasing after him, full of vigour and passion. Gary Fahy. Tomas Meehan. The Meehan brothers are doing very well on that right flank of the Galway defensive formation. Eamon O'Hara into Sean Davey. Sean Davey, by the way, and John McPartland have switched. Sean Davey is in the corner. Chance for Ken Killeen. And the goalkeeper did very well. I think it was Martin McNamara that got the touch and deflected that ball out for a 45. Well, last Last year, Martin McNamara was very disappointed with his own personal performance. Certainly felt he gifted one particular goal to Sligo, but he's made amends a year later, as Paul Taylor takes the subsequent 45. Then the breeze catching it up and it going wide. 6th wide of the match for Sligo.
That was a terrific save by Martin McNamara. But what that does, that little cameo there, shows that in the second half, when Sligo have the win, that they will cause the Galway full backline problems. There will be opportunities there for them.
What a huge psychological boost it would be for Sligo if they can get on the scoreboard in the remaining 9 minutes of this first half. Sideline ball to Sligo. Paul Taylor shows for it. Paul Durkin. Sligo not getting any ground despite 3 passes. Now here's Ken Killeen. The referee blew his whistle, and Sligo players Jerry McGowan and Ken Killeen are protesting. Obviously they feel that they did not foul the Galway fullback Gary Fahey, but immediately referee Brian White blew the whistle. So Gary Fahey is able to resume. Joe Bergen. And some fouling off the ball. And Michael Langan gives a free to Galway. Michael Donlan hits it perfectly. His second point of the match, and the first from a place ball.
A terrific score again by Michael Donlan. And just as he was putting the ball down to kick it, the 3 full forwards of the Galway, they were actually making runs, giving him options just in case he thought it was too far out. A terrific movement by the inside forwards, and what a score by Michael Donlan.
Again, Joe Bergen knocks it down. Taken up by Tommy Joyce. Brother Porrick. Joe Bergen comes for the return, and that is harmlessly wide. Certainly the expected dominance, even allowing for the breeze, Tony, of Eamon O'Hara and Paul Durkin, has not materialised.
It hasn't, and the reason why is because the whole Galway full forward line is beavering around the middle of the field. They're working very, very hard for each other, and Sligo just cannot get the grips with it.
Again, Galway there in numbers. Sean O'Dupere tries once more. Nice loopy ball in towards Niall Finnegan. Good defending again by Mark Cosgrove. And the Sligo full back line in one-to-one situations are doing well, despite that wonderful kick by Niall Finnegan. An almost impossible angle, because you cannot ask more than from a defender than to push his opponent out towards the corner flag. Great point by Niall Finnegan. Let's just watch this again, literally on the goal line. How did he do it? Third point of the match.
He shouldn't have even tried to do it, Martin.
No.
But the win certainly did help him a little, but it was a terrific score.
2 points now in this first half, Tony. Paul Clancy's and Niall Finnegan literally along the end line.
Fantastic scores, really good scores. And you cannot blame the defence for that, because he did very well there.
Derek Savage. Galway bubbling with passion and vigour for this championship match. Second point for the Cortoon Shamrocks clubman, Derek Savage. Half an hour played. And Galway have now registered 11 points. And only one Galway forward has failed to score, and that's Tommy Joyce. And that's no discredit to him because he's playing very, very well. Michael Donlan. Niall Finnegan wanted it rather quickly. Sean O'Dwyer. Here's Tommy Joyce. And that situation is now rectified. All 6 Galway forwards have scored. He obviously felt left out of what was happening amongst his colleagues and decided to change the scenario. Let's just watch this again. The pass across, Tommy Joyce looking at the posts and straight over the middle of that crossbar. A dozen points for Galway after 31 minutes. Still no white flag, no green flag raised by Sligo. And the Sligo shape has certainly been lost now, as we now have only 2 Sligo players playing inside the Galway 20-metre line. Goalkeeper Peter Walsh switches it over to the other side. Again, Paul Durkin is making himself available. Good defending by Galway. Noel Maguire, well, he's lucky because Brendan Phillips was fouled, but Noel Maguire was ball watching, and it could have been a very serious situation.
It happened a few times when they played Mayo the last day, where they were playing the ball out and they lost possession, but they're being punished for it today. But Galway just look a different class so far.
This is going back earlier in the game to a save that apparently was made by Martin McNamara. And fine effort indeed. And
boy, could Sligo do with it. And I'm sure Martin McNamara coming up here today had a few nightmares about what happened in the last few years. Certainly he'll be happy with that.
Here's Brendan Phillips, who seemed to get an accidental knock there from Tommy Joyce.
He was lucky.
Looked insignificant there in the replay. Kick out by Peter Walsh. Doesn't gain much ground. Niall Finnegan pumping it into the corner to Derek Savage. Memories of '98 come flooding back when you see this sort of performance from Galway. It looks like the All-Ireland champions of 2 years ago have regained their appetite. Finnegan floating one in. Noel Maguire has it, or did have it. It's really anybody's there as the defence look in trouble. Well gathered by Paul Clancy. Trying to get it back to Joe Bergen. Corey Joyce pulls on it first time and sends it over the bar. Hat-trick of points for the Galway captain. 34 minutes played. Galway 13 points. Sligo no score. Can it all be put down to the wind, Tony?
I'm afraid not. They really will have to have a lot more hunger winning breaks and stuff like that. Everything around here, even that there, down to Michael Donlan, and great support play up again. Sligo just aren't in the game at all. They're just not there.
Jason Killeen. That's a great point. A young man given his chance by his manager today in the absence of so many established stars shows just why John O'Mahony had the faith in him. The centre half-back coming forward to register his first point in the Connacht Championship. "14 points. No score for Sligo. Who would have expected it? 8 Galway players have now scored. Can Mickey Moore do anything at all about this situation? As we just mentioned a moment ago, even allowing for this ferocious breeze, there is something within the soul or within the heart that seems to be lacking in Sligo. And the referee's whistle, I'm sure, from a Sligo perspective, can't come fast enough. It's a wonderful performance by the All-Ireland football champions of '98. Derek Savage scored 2 points. Pádraig Joyce scored 3. In fact, from midfield up to the corner forward, Sean O'Donnell is the only player that has failed to score. But he has been playing brilliantly. What can Sligo do at half-time? But certainly from a Galway perspective, they must be happy. As at half-time, the tribesmen lead by this scoreline. Galway, 14 points. Sligo, no score. Well, as Jim Carney reported just before we went to the break, Eamon O'Hara did have difficulties during the week with ankle ligaments, but thoughts about his early retirement from the game were a bit premature, because here he is back at midfield and ready to start. We see that perhaps Sligo have introduced one substitute. Rory Brennan has been brought on in a defensive role. We'll tell you more about that in a moment. It looks like Sean Davey is the player that's gone off. And first free of the game is to Galway, or rather to Sligo.
Rory Brennan actually is a midfielder. I'm sure what he's going to do is try and bring Wales Silk out and play as a third midfielder for Sligo.
Jason Killeen up towards Derek Savage. Tommy Joyce. David Durkin with him. And the referee is giving a free to Sligo because Tommy Joyce changed hands. First free of the game, of the second half rather, to Sligo. Jason Killeen. John McParland literally squelches out of his hand. It's an easy ball for Sean O'Donnell. Sean O'Donnell. Plenty of Sligo defenders. Mark Cosgrove. Composed and controlled. Down towards Rory Brennan. There's the substitution confirmed. Comes down towards Paul Taylor. And Sligo needs scores very, very badly. Ken Killeen. Paul Durkin. And the free is given to Galway. Good defending.
Terrific defending by Galway, but yet again, there was Paul Taylor, the one man that can score. Why not have him in there in front of the goal, as Galway used it in the first half. Terrific defending, got around him, blocked him down, didn't foul him, very disciplined, and a free the other way.
Great block down. But it still remains the possession of Galway. Wind and rain seems to be increasing in intensity as we speak yet again. A massive shower coming in from Ben Bulben at the moment, which we can't really see because of the terrible conditions, but very soon I'm sure the umbrellas will be popping up around Markovitz Park. Paul Durkin. Derek Savage. Was in fact fouled, but the referee allowed him the option of going forward, and then gives a free against him. And I think that's why Derek is so annoyed with Brian White. Free to Sligo. The direct route to goal is now required. It falls for Jerry McGowan. And again, Galway are back. Two of them. Michael Donlan, centre half forward, and Tomas Meehan. Niall Finnegan. Comes back to Ronan Keane. Desi Sline seemed to pick up an injury as he was about to kick the ball, and Jason Killeen is being spoken to by the referee. This is a crucial period now for Sligo because they do have wind and rain, and I can tell you it's quite terrible here. First yellow card of the game given to Jason Killeen. This is the injury to Desi Sline. You can see the challenge was high on the wing forward. Plenty of height. Matched by accuracy. It's taken a long time to arrive. 39 minutes of a championship semi-final, and finally Sligo raise a white flag. The voyage is back on track, but it's a long, long way. Sligo have introduced Brian Walsh, it would appear, and we'll confirm that in a moment. Yes, Brian Walsh is on the field and playing a wing forward. Ball aimed at Derek Savage. Getting away from Brendan Phillips. Has the space to have a go, but it's an unsuccessful one. Sixth wide of the match for Galway. Ball breaks for David Durkin. Nicely picked up, Paul Durkin. Aiming at Jerry McGowan. Did well to hold possession. Tomas Meehan right beside him. That's a high challenge on Jerry McGowan. And another free for Sligo. That is sent wide. Desi Sline will be very disappointed. Confirmation of the yellow card a few moments ago for Jason Killeen. Taylor in towards Ken Killeen. Gary Fahey once more fouled by Ken Killeen, and that's going to be a free to Galway. And a yellow card for the full forward from Sligo. So the full forward only becomes the second player on the pitch to receive a yellow card. Eamon O'Hara playing in a deep defensive role. Paul Taylor. Jerry McGowan claims he was being held by Tomas Meehan, but the free goes to Galway. Sideline ball, Sligo. Michael Langan again trying to find Ken Killeen, but Gary Fahey is very alert and plays the ball first. Declan Meehan, Michael Donlan, knocked down by Noel Maguire. Good defending by Brendan Phillips. It just slips from his grasp. Here's Paul Durkin. Didn't look at all, Ronan Keane, where he was sending the ball. It just worked out for him. And really, you'd wonder why they're playing crossfield balls on a day when the wind is ferocious and indeed to their advantage. Corey Joyce to Paul Clancy. Derek Savage chasing after this with Noel Maguire. And the fullback did well. Clearly a push in the back and quickly taken. Rory Brennan and Tupper Curry down towards Ken Killeen, knocked away from him, and that's going to be a sideline ball, I would think, to Sligo. Sligo unable to keep it in, Brian Walsh. So it's going to be a kick out for Martin McNamara.
I think, Marty, at this stage you should nearly put Paul Taylor in full forward, because the Galway backs are out first to every ball, winning it cleanly and letting it off. And they just don't look as if they're going to score in there in the full forward now.
Joe Bergen knocked away by Rory Brennan. Ray Selk. Jason Killeen. Mark Cosgrove tussling with Niall Finnegan, and the referee gives the free to Mark Cosgrove, and I have to say I have no idea why. If anything, it seemed to be a free for Niall Finnegan. The little touch from Rory Brennan knocked it down to Eamon O'Hara, and that is going over the bar. Scored one against Mayo, the clinching point, in fact, in that quarter-final, the very last score of the game. And the Sligo captain gets their second point here now. I'm sure Mickey Moran cannot believe the first half performance by a team that he has trained so well and developed. It is rather surprising, though, looking at it from a Sligo tactical point of view, that they don't move somebody like Eamon O'Hara, Paul Taylor, in front of the Galway goalposts. Down at the other end, Pádraig Joyce is available. And that is simple. Fourth point of the match for the full forward. And Galway have now achieved what Sligo failed to do in the first half, and that's score against the breeze.
And that's what wins championships. If you look at Galway, they won the All-Ireland. They have forwards that everyone is envious of them. Kerry have the same type of forwards. Why did Mayo not win All-Irelands? Because they just can't score.
Paul Taylor. Eamon O'Hara. Sends David Durkin on a run. And Michael Donlan working tirelessly, reminiscent of his great runs in the All-Ireland final against Kildare. Michael Donlan is back and taking over that leadership role from Jeff Fallon, and matched by a brilliant point. The score of the championship so far. What magnificent. And Michael Donlan has assumed that mantle of responsibility, won the ball back, got the return pass, and sent over this ball straight over the bar. It's magic. That's what Gaelic football and championship football should be about.
That is a terrific score, and all came from Sligo, working the ball up, looking for a short pass, intercepted, and terrific play, and what a finish.
Well, it may not be very entertaining from the spectators' point of view, but I think it was worth travelling to Markovitz Park just to see that Michael Donlan score. Paul Clancy and Derek Savage. It's the sort of a score that would knock the wind out of any team. Here's more. Joe Bergen gets his second point on his championship debut. What an incredible scoreline. 17 points to 2. Michael Donlan again, not even attempting to catch the ball. Niall Finnegan feeding Derek Savage. Porrick Joyce is inside. Joyce wants it. That option is now gone, and Derek Savage will in turn instead put it over the bar. Well, the full forward line have now scored between them 10 points. Indeed, will they? The objective now could well be to surpass Cork's hurling heroes when they won the Munster title. This is Gaelic football, and this is 18 points for Galway. Brilliant catch, Sean O'Donnell. Unquestionably taking over the leadership role. And Kevin Walsh, Niall Finnegan. Sligo are certainly demoralised now. Well, the points might have been added on by Derek Savage and Niall Finnegan, but I certainly feel that Michael Donlan point has demoralised Sligo big time. Here's Joe Bergen again. Porrick Joyce. Back to Bergen. This is a virtuoso performance. Joe Bergen has now scored 3 points for his county.
But it's surreal, Marty. No Sligo player has touched the ball since the last. The only one that's touched the ball is the Sligo goalkeeper. At this stage, they should even be fighting for it. They should be trying to block people down, just chasing them. They're not in the game at all. It looks as if they don't want to play. They're just forgetting about it. And in fact, the Sligo crowd are leaving.
It's an amazing scene actually here as we see Kieran Quinn being introduced for Sligo, and the player that's going off is Jerry McGowan. But it's unusual to see at this early stage football fans behind Peter Walsh's goal leaving the ground, as Galway continue to display their repertoire of skills to an audience captivated indeed by their magic on Markievicz Park. Paul Taylor pushed on the back by Gary Fahey, and that's going to be a free for Sligo. Desi Sloyne taking over the free taking at the far side. It's this head and causes no great problems to Galway. Porrick Joyce and Ray Silk. Derek Savage. Sean O'Dwyer provided the overlap. Niall Finnegan. I think there's big trouble here for Sligo. Good defending again. David Durkin is given the benefit of the doubt, and it's a free for him. Desi Sloyne, Kieran Quinn, Eamon O'Hara. And when he makes mistakes like that, you can see that psychologically Sligo are very upset. They've lost their confidence and indeed their concentration. Amazing to see a mass exodus of fans leaving at such an early stage in a Connacht semi-final. Lovely skill Beautiful by Jason Killeen. I'm not too sure he meant it, but we'll give him the credit. And that is going to be a sideline ball.
You'd almost hope at this stage when Niall Finnegan winning the last that he wouldn't actually get a goal to be so cruel on Sligo. But really the way they're playing, they don't deserve anything else. They're just, we're admiring Galway, so are they. They're just watching them and admiring what they're doing.
I wonder what Mayo people are thinking of at the moment. Gary Fahey at the end of it, chance, and Mark McNamara is there, despite Desi Sloan's best efforts. Eamon O'Hara. Paul Taylor. Paul Durkin coming through, chance here, and that's gone wide. 9 wides for Sligo. On a day when they've only raised the white flag twice. And obviously, people of Sligo in particular, at least some of the fans here, feel that this game is over. And Sligo, a bitter disappointment. Some loyal fans are still staying. Paul Taylor did well to hold onto the ball. David Durkin, Ken Killeen, and that is floated over the bar. Full forward gets his first point of the match, and only the third player to score. It's the first half that Sligo certainly will want to forget, but probably never will.
No, Marty, and it'll have huge implications for Sligo, because I cannot see Mickey Moran coming on again for a 5th year with all the travelling. It is a very young team. Most of them are under 26 years old, and they should have a future. But a defeat like this would have a terrific, or have a huge impact on them psychologically again.
Paul Durkin manages to get past Kieran Quinn. And as long as they continue to play the ball around this area of the field, they'll cause no problems for Galway. Paul Taylor. Ken Killeen. Only Desi Sloan is in around the goalposts. So too is Brian Walsh, but the pass inside is poor. Gary Fahey and Ray Silk have the situation under control. Declan Meehan. Michael Donlan. And that's a line ball. Change in the Sligo plan. Paul Taylor has taken up a position of full forward, and Eamon O'Hara is in the half-forward line now.
There's no point in having him in there unless you kick the ball into him. If they keep running up and down the field with the ball, there's no point in having him in there.
Derek Savage. Very wide. Well, John O'Mahony was a very worried man when I spoke to him earlier in the week because of his injury problems, but this team has the hunger and the appetite, and indeed the style that we associate with this Galway team that he built and won the All-Ireland in '98. Paul Taylor and Ken Killeen, but there's nobody in around the Galway goalposts. They're arriving now, but it's a little bit too late, because Ken Killeen has lost possession. Jason Killeen. Michael Donlan. Available is Ray Silk. Michael Donlan orchestrates the move and tells him that Joe Bergen is free. Good block done by Eamon O'Hara, but Bergen maturing nicely in this championship season now. Niall Finnegan. Derek Savage. Back to Finnegan. Survived a hefty challenge from Brendan McPhillips. And Finnegan will also add to the tally of Galway wides. 8 points, 8 wides rather, for Galway. Nicely added to by Rory Brennan. Sean O'Donnell. Corey Joyce. Sean O'Donnell has gone into a scoring position. Sligo have this particular attack cut off. Paul Durkin. Brendan Phillips. Paul Taylor. Floating it in towards Ken Killeen. Martin McNamara wisely saw the deflection off the Galway defender and prevented a 45. Gary Fahy needs the help of Tomas Meehan. Sean O'Donnell. Sideline ball to Sligo. Thanks to the good work of Kieran Gwynn. Mickey Moran and John O'Mahony right beside each other. Contrasting thoughts, I'm sure, at the moment. And Ronan Keane wins a free. And the rain begins to pour down again. Paul Taylor sends this to the right and wide. Now registered 10 wides on the Richter scale and only scoring 3 points. It's heartbreaking for Sligo. And now the fans have definitely decided that this Connacht semi-final is more or less over. Well, there was so much hope going into this semi-final that Sligo would in fact perform. They were bitterly disappointed when they lost the league match to Clare, which deprived them of course of a playoff in the league semi-final, but having beaten Mayo, certainly Sligo people and Sligo footballers thought that this was going to be their year. Paul Clancy, scorer of 1 point in the first half, scorer of another one in the second half. When you think that Ja Fallon is absent and so many players, John Dively, Sean O'Donnell doubtful, Kevin Walsh still unavailable, this is a wonderful performance by Galway.
Yes, it was a clinical performance by Galway. All the way from the back line forward, everyone worked very, very hard for each other. The half forwards got back behind midfield, won the breaks, and what a forward line. When you have forwards like those guys, it's great to even watch them as a spectator, but by God can they score.
Great catch by Joe Bergen. Brave running by Sean O'Donnell. Paul Clancy. Oh. And Paul will be disappointed. Well, Sligo have made another alteration. It's Eamon Cawley has come on for Sligo. That's the number 18. And the man that's gone off is Ken Killeen, the full forward. And Ken Killeen was very much the target man for Sligo. And in many ways, his substitution reflects an awful day for Sligo. They just could not get the ball in to him sufficiently well enough. Here's Eamon Cawley. There are 6 Galway players. There's now 2 Sligo players inside their half of the field. Rory Brennan, back to Paul Taylor. And that should be over the bar. First point of the match for one of Sligo's best players. This is the point again by Paul Taylor. Did well. And the big cheer is that John Donlan has been introduced. And John normally plays in the full forward line. And we'll see in a moment when he informs the player who's going to be coming off. It could well be Niall Finnegan. And Niall, who contributed 4 points today, one almost impossible to actually predict that he would do it from the end line. So it's a chance for John O'Mahony to give other players a chance. Eamon O'Hara, David Durkin, and Paul Durkin. Rory Brennan. Desi Sloan out in the wing. Chance here of a point, which is gone wide. Their 11th wide of the match. Kick out quickly taken. Joe Bergen given a chance to compose himself, look around and give it back to his midfield partner, Sean O'Donnell. Michael Langan just got a touch, but Derek Savage floats this one. Oh dear, oh dear. And Paul Clancy suffered badly there from a challenge from Ronan Keane. And this could well mean a red card for the Sligo right half back. And referee Brian White wants to have a word with him. But both players, Eamon O'Hara is explaining to Pádraig Joyce, his opposite captain, that they were both ball watching, but Paul Clancy certainly suffered in that challenge. And I'm sure that Brian White will possibly acknowledge that that was going a fair challenge just for the ball, not a fair challenge on Paul Clancy. And let's see what happens here. It looked terrible. Referee Brian White clearly explaining the rules and the facts and his perspective on it. Will it merit a yellow card? Because I think both players were going for the ball, and Ronan Keane is by no means a dirty player, a very fair player, and I think genuinely there was no malicious intent involved in the challenge. Pádraig Joyce sends it over the bar for his 5th point of the match. 22 points to 4. Kieran Comer has been introduced for Galway. Let's just watch this again. You see, it was a terrible, but both players were going for the ball. And I think the referee was correct here. It was a terrible challenge, that has to be said. Declan Meehan. Kieran Comer. Back out to Pádraig Joyce. And it's just tailing to the left. Just confirmation of the earlier substitution. Kieran Comer came on for Paul Clancy. And now Galway are introducing David Tierney for Derek Savage. For Tommy Joyce, rather. Great catch by Sean O'Donnell. Derek Savage. Back outside towards Kieran Comer. Goalkeeper Peter Walsh misses it. Mark Cosgrove is over there. Pádraig Joyce intercepts. Lovely little flick back to the captain. Eamon Cawley. Intercepting is Sean O'Dwyer. Ronan Keane gives it to his opposite, number 5, Declan Meehan. Joe Bergen. And that is very much wide.
The game's a farce at this stage, Marty. I think everybody just wants the game to be over. So disappointing for Sligo. They had so much hope. I was up here last night, and the hope they had of just doing themselves justice, and that's something they didn't do. They really didn't do themselves justice. They're better than what they showed here today, and that's a sad fact.
Confirmation there of the substitution a moment ago. Ray Silk combining with Kieran Comer and David Tierney. Michael Donlan floating one in for Pádraig Joyce. Goalkeeper Peter Walsh will deal with that situation. Down comes Rory Brennan. Back out towards Eamon Cawley. Paul Taylor. Cawley sends it wide. Not alone will Mickey Moran be bitterly disappointed about the performance, but I think the lack of spirit as well will really surprise him.
I think all the players will be disappointed because they had so much spirit against Mayo. They just never captured it. I think the fact that Galway played with the wind, it worked in their favour, and they crushed whatever spirit was in Sligo, and they went in at half-time so much up that is just inconceivable they'd come back from 14 points down.
David Durkin. And that looks like a good effort, but it's just again to the right and wide, giving them 13 wides in this game. Mickey Moran must just wonder what went wrong. On the opposite end of the spectrum, John O'Mahony must be so happy, so pleased that the spirit of '98 has been rekindled. And I wonder, will any team be able to cope with Galway when they now have their appetite back? It's a Galway Leitrim Connacht football final on a day indeed when Sligo will want to forget this particular match very, very quickly. I'm not too sure they ever will, because this was a magical performance by Galway in the first half. Sligo failing to score in that opening 35 minutes and only able to register 4 points over 70 minutes of action. Full-time score from Markovitz Park. Galway, an incredible 22 points. Sligo, 4 points.
John O'Mahony, commercial break.